The city of Shebu was usually a very busy place. During the day, it was full of bright lights, noisy cars, and people talking loudly. It was known for its lively markets and bustling streets that were always full of life. But tonight, something felt different. In a small old part of the city, there was an unusual quiet. The usual sounds were gone, replaced by a strange silence that made the air feel heavy and still. Dean moved quietly through these narrow streets. He walked with purpose, his eyes scanning the shadows, always looking for anything out of place. He was on a mission, and every part of him was focused. He wore a dark jacket, which helped him disappear into the night. It was an old habit, part of his work as a hunter. The jacket was practical, letting him blend in with the deep shadows around him. Suddenly, Dean stopped. His sharp ears caught a sound, something strange and out of place in the quiet night. It was a rough scraping noise, like something heavy being dragged along the ground. The sound grew a little clearer. It was definitely a heavy dragging sound, like someone wearing big, heavy boots was scraping them along the rough, broken pavement. It was slow and unsteady, not like normal footsteps. Without making a sound, Dean reached under his sleeve. He pulled out a small, plain bracelet. It was his Buntot Pagi, a very special item that looked like a simple piece of jewelry to anyone else. Even in the dim light, the bracelet seemed to shimmer faintly on his wrist. It wasn't just a decoration, it was ready. Dean could feel the power waiting inside it, ready to change into a weapon at his command. He squinted, looking further down the street where the dragging sound came from. In the very dim light, he could just make out a figure. It was tall and shadowy, hard to see clearly in the darkness. The way the figure moved was unsettling. It was moving slowly, but not with a normal, steady walk. It seemed to stumble and drag itself forward, almost like it was struggling just to put one foot in front of the other. As the figure got a little closer, Dean could see more details. It was wearing clothes that were torn and ragged. To his shock, he realized it was a uniform, a tattered witching hour uniform. This uniform looked very old, like it had been worn for many, many years. It was covered in thick layers of dust and dirt, making it look even more ancient and sad. It was clear it hadn't been cleaned in a long time. Dean's heart gave a sudden, hard thump in his chest. A jolt went through him, a feeling of shock mixed with fear. This was more than just a regular monster. This was something deeply unsettling and personal. He squinted again, trying to make out the details on the tattered uniform. Even through the dirt and rips, Dean recognized a very specific emblem. It was a symbol he knew all too well. The symbol was etched into his memory, a part of his family's history. It was the crest, the special mark of the clan. Dean's own clan. The figure kept coming closer, its slow, dragging steps making the unsettling sound again. Its head was hanging low, so Dean couldn't see its face clearly yet, but its presence felt heavy and wrong. A cold, deep chill ran all the way down Dean's spine. It wasn't just the cool night air. It was a feeling of dread, a terrible realization forming in his mind. Something impossible was happening. His mind raced back, pulled by the sight of the uniform. He remembered the Great Cleansing, a terrible event that happened 15 years ago. It was a day of betrayal and immense loss for the witching hour. On that dark day, many brave hunters had died. The witching hour had been torn apart by traitors, and countless members of different clans, including his own, had been lost in the brutal fight. This figure wearing the clan uniform should have been among them. It should have been dead, just like all the others who fell that day, but it was here, walking. A chilling, impossible sight. As the strange figure came closer, a horrible smell filled the air. It was a very bad smell, like something old and dead. It smelled of decay, making the quiet night feel even more creepy to Dean. The dim streetlights showed more of the figure. Its skin was a sickly pale white, like it had been sitting for a very long time. It looked waxy and stiff, not at all like a living person's skin. Dean's gaze went to its eyes. They were cloudy and dull, like old glass, showing no life at all. But even though they looked empty, Dean could feel a strong feeling of meanness and hate coming from them. Right away, Dean knew. This was not a regular human. No living person could look or smell like this, or have eyes so full of badness. It was something else entirely, something unnatural and wrong. It was a reanimated hunter, a soldier from his own group, brought back from the dead. This was a ghost from the past, a terrible memory made real, come to walk the earth once more. Without warning, the creature lunged forward. It moved with a surprising burst of speed, much faster than Dean expected for something that looked so slow. It was a sudden, scary attack. It reached out with bony fingers, long and thin, trying to grab Dean. Its hand was like a claw, ready to dig in and hold him tight. Dean could almost feel its cold touch even before it reached him. Dean reacted quickly. He twisted his wrist, and his Buntat Pagi bracelet glowed brightly for a moment. With a quick shimmer, it changed from a simple bracelet into a short, sharp sword, ready for battle. He moved just as quickly as the monster. Dean twisted his body to the side, stepping out of the way. The creature's bony fingers swiped at empty air, missing him by just an inch. Dean's mind raced. He had fought many strange things, but this was different. He quickly remembered all his old hunter training, the lessons about fighting creatures that seemed impossible to stop. These weren't just mindless, slow zombies like in scary movies. These were dead hunters, which meant they were once trained fighters. They knew how to attack, how to move, even in their terrible state. Dean swung his sword, aiming for the creature's chest where its heart would have been. He put all his strength into the blow, hoping to stop it once and for all. The blade flashed in the dim light. The short, sharp blade cut through the old, tattered uniform easily. The cloth ripped apart with a soft tearing sound, and the sword went deep into the creature's body. But the creature did not fall. The deep cut, which would have killed any living thing, did not stop it. It stood there, unharmed, as if it felt nothing at all. It barely reacted to the wound. Its cloudy eye stayed fixed on Dean, and it kept trying to claw at him, its bony fingers scraping the air as it moved forward, slow and relentless. Dean tried again. This time he aimed for its arm, striking with even more force. He hoped to break it, to slow the creature down, even if he couldn't stop it completely. With a sickening sound, the creature's arm twisted in a very unnatural way. It hung limp at its side, broken and twisted, but the monster didn't make a sound. It didn't seem to feel any pain. Still, it kept coming. Even with a broken arm, it shuffled forward, dragging its twisted limb, its eyes still fixed on Dean with that empty, hateful look. It showed no sign of stopping or feeling anything. Dean quickly remembered an old, very important rule that hunters had for these kinds of creatures. The rule was clear: burn them clean. That was the only way to truly stop them. He quickly reached into his pocket. His fingers found a small glass vial. It contained a special, brightly colored potion, just what he needed for this kind of enemy. Dean had found the vial in his pocket. It held a special potion, glowing a bright, fiery orange color. This was not a normal drink. It was made to fight evil, and Dean knew exactly what it was for. He quickly pulled out the cork with a soft pop. As he did, he muttered a few quick, secret words. These words were part of an ancient chant, meant to wake up the potion's power. Dean poured the glowing liquid onto his sword. Right away, the edge of his Buntat Pagi began to shimmer and change. It turned into a fiery red glow like hot coals. The blade was now ready, burning with magic. With the burning sword, Dean struck the creature's head. He aimed carefully, putting all his strength into the blow. The fiery blade sliced through the monster, and a sickening sound filled the air. The reanimated hunter stopped moving. It made a terrible, silent scream, a raspy sound that barely left its throat. Its cloudy eyes widened for a moment, full of pain and something else that Dean couldn't quite name. Then, its entire body burst into bright, hot flames. The fire was sudden and powerful, consuming the creature quickly. It burned with a fierce light, showing the end of its terrible journey. The burning figure fell to the ground with a soft thud. In just a few moments, the fierce flames turned its body into nothing but black ash. There was no trace left, only the faint smell of smoke. Dean watched as the last little sparks of fire faded away. He stood there, his sword still glowing faintly, watching the emptiness where the monster had been. His face was grim, showing no joy in the victory. A cold, hard knot of dread began to tighten in his stomach. It was a bad feeling, a sense of fear and worry that grew with each passing moment. He knew this fight was far from over. He looked around a quiet, dark street. This was just one reanimated hunter. A chilling question formed in his mind. How many more were there, hiding in the shadows, waiting to be awakened? Dean knew he had to tell someone. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his secure comms device. It was a special phone, made only for hunters to talk safely. The device was small and sleek, made of black metal. It looked like a very fancy phone, but it was much more. It was a tool of the witching hour, connecting him to the hidden world of hunters. he quickly typed a message on the screen, his fingers moving fast. He sent it to Don, his younger brother, who worked more closely with the Witching Hour's main group. The message was short and clear. Anomaly confirmed. Reanimated hunter. Requires fire to neutralize. It was a warning, telling Don about the new kind of enemy and how to fight it. Far away in the bustling city of Manila, Don was sitting in his office. It was late, but his office was still lit, a quiet space in the busy city. He sat at his large, polished desk. Papers were neatly stacked, and his computer screens glowed with maps and reports. Everything was organized, just how Don liked it. His fingers moved swiftly over a special keyboard. It was designed for him, helping him work quickly even though he couldn't see. He was always busy, managing the Witching Hour's affairs. Don could not see with his eyes, but his other senses were incredibly sharp. He could hear the tiny shifts in the air, feel the faintest vibrations, and sense things that others couldn't. Suddenly, his comms device chimed. It was the special sound of Dean's urgent message coming through. Don paused, his hand still over the keyboard, listening carefully. Don's face, usually calm and thoughtful, grew serious. He knew Dean wouldn't send a message like this unless it was something truly important and dangerous. The new threat was here. Don quickly typed a reply to Dean. Understood, he wrote, meaning he got the message. He added, stay safe. More reports coming in. It was a warning that Dean was not alone in facing this new threat. Indeed, all across the country, exactly similar scary things were happening. Other hunters were finding the same kind of reanimated enemies, fighting the same impossible battle in different cities. Reports began to flood into the Witching Hour's secret network. Every minute, new messages popped up, telling of another sighting, another fight against the reanimated dead. From old, empty warehouses to quiet, overgrown cemeteries and even forgotten, empty schools, these places suddenly became alive with horror. They were no longer just abandoned buildings. All of these places became spots where the dead rose again. The air in these areas felt heavy and cold, a sign that something unnatural and powerful was at work, bringing the long dead back to life. And the reanimated figures were always the same. Former hunters, brave men and women who had died in the Great Cleansing. Now, they were back, but not as they once were. They were slow, their movements stiff and clumsy like puppets with broken strings. But there were more and more of them, their numbers growing with each passing hour, making them a greater threat. Each reanimated hunter seemed to carry a silent, sad memory of betrayal. It was as if their bodies, though dead, still held the pain of what happened during the cleansing, a pain Dean understood deeply. Dean traveled quickly from city to city, following the alerts that flashed on his comms device. He moved constantly, chasing down every new sighting, always on the hunt. He moved like a shadow, unseen by most, striking quickly and without warning. His goal was to find and stop the reanimated threats before they could harm anyone else or draw too much attention. He soon learned to be careful with his special fire potion. There wasn't much of it, and he needed to save it for when he truly needed its powerful, cleansing flames against the toughest enemies. Sometimes, when the potion was too precious to use, he found other ways. He looked for nearby sources of fire that he could use, using his smarts to help him in battle. An old kerosene lamp, flickering weakly in a forgotten shed, or a broken gas pipe leaking dangerous fumes in an abandoned building. These became his tools, providing the fire he needed. His unique tattoos, the ones he made himself with his own blood and magic, were also very useful. They were special, unlike the Aggie mat other hunters used, and they held unique powers. By focusing his energy, Dean could summon a small fire familiar from his tattoos. It was like a glowing ember, a tiny living spark of fire that could fly and move at his command. This fire familiar wasn't strong enough to fight big monsters on its own, but it could set things ablaze, creating the fire Dean needed to defeat the reanimated hunters, turning them to ash. Using his tattoos this way took a lot of energy from Dean. It drained him, making his magical tattoos dim slightly, losing some of their bright, vibrant glow. To bring their power back, he had to recharge them. This meant channeling more energy into them, often by adding a small drop of his own blood, a sacrifice that renewed their strength. It was a painful process, feeling his own life force being used, but it was also necessary. He couldn't fight without his unique powers, and he knew he had to endure the pain for his mission. The more Dean fought, the better he became. Each battle taught him new tricks, making him stronger and faster. He moved with amazing skill, a true master of combat. Dean moved with brutal efficiency, meaning he fought with great skill and speed. He was like a whirlwind, a mix of burning fire from his magic and sharp steel from his sword, taking down every enemy in his path. Even with each victory, Dean felt no joy. It felt hollow, empty, like a sad reminder of what was lost during the Great Cleansing. Every defeated reanimated hunter was a painful memory of his past. Meanwhile, far away from Dean's battles, Maya sat in her cozy studio apartment. The room was neat, filled with colorful decorations and soft lights, looking like a normal young person's home. Bright ring lights lit up her face, making her look cheerful and clear as she filmed her latest vlog. She was a content creator by day, showing a happy, ordinary side of herself to the world. "Hello, Mythbusters," she said with a bright, cheerful smile into the camera. Her voice was friendly and inviting, perfect for her online audience. "Today we're debunking the latest zombie scare," Maya explained, still smiling. She spoke about the weird stories that were going around, making it sound like it was all just a big misunderstanding. She showed blurry videos that people had posted on social media, acting like they were just silly mistakes. Her vlogs were meant to make people think these scary stories weren't real. "See? Clearly just bad lighting and tired people," she said, pointing at the screen with a knowing look. She made it sound so simple, so easy to believe, just like her cover job needed her to do. Her true work, however, began only when the camera turned off. The cheerful vlogger disappeared and the serious hunter, the witch, emerged. This was her real job, her secret life. She carefully spread her tarot cards on a small, round wooden table. The cards were old, well-used, and held great power. This was her tool for divination, for seeing things hidden from others. In the dim light of her apartment, the cards glowed faintly. It was a soft, mystical light, showing that they were more than just paper. They were magical tools, filled with ancient power. She shuffled them with practiced, careful hands, her fingers moving smoothly. It was a ritual, a way to connect with the magic, preparing to ask questions about what was to come. Each card, she knew, held a secret. It carried a piece of the future, a clue to what was happening or what might happen next. Her job was to read them, to understand their hidden messages. She drew 3 cards and laid them face up on the table. The first was the Tower, the second the Hanged Man, and the last, the most worrying of all, was the Devil. The Tower card was always a bad sign. It meant sudden destruction, a big problem, something falling apart. It showed chaos and unexpected trouble, a major shake-up. The Hanged Man showed a sacrifice or a turning point. It meant someone might have to give something up, or that things were about to change in a big, important way. But the Devil card was the most worrying of them all. It made her heart sink. Its meaning was dark and heavy, pointing to something truly evil and dangerous. It meant evil influence, something bad controlling things, like a hidden puppet master. It also meant temptation or very dark magic, powers that should not be used. Maya focused all her attention on the Devil card. She closed her eyes, trying to reach deeper into its meaning, to understand the source of the evil it represented. Images flashed quickly in her mind, like a super-fast movie. She saw deep darkness, heard faint, chilling whispers, and glimpsed ancient, twisted symbols that spoke of forbidden magic. Through her visions, Maya saw a faint, twisted thread. It was like a dark string, magically connecting all the reanimated hunters she had seen or heard about. This thread pulled them together, showing they were not alone. This thread was made of dark magic. It felt very old, like it had been around for a very long time, and it was incredibly strong. It was a kind of power that made Maya feel uneasy, almost sick. Maya knew for sure that this magic was not from the Garden of Eden, the special magical world. The Garden of Eden's magic was light and natural, but this felt completely different, like a dark, unnatural force. It felt deeply wrong to Maya. It was like something that came from a much deeper, colder, and darker place than she could imagine. A place filled with evil and corruption, not the gentle magic of nature. As she focused, Maya started to see patterns in the attacks. The way the reanimated hunters moved and appeared was not random. It was like looking at a giant spider web, with invisible lines connecting everything. It became clear to her that the reanimated hunters moved with a hidden purpose. They weren't just wandering around. Someone was guiding them, making them go to specific places for a reason. They weren't just random attacks happening here and there. This was an organized effort, a plan. The enemies were being sent out with clear goals, making the threat much more serious. Maya could feel it now. They seemed to be gathering. They were moving towards certain points on the map. like soldiers preparing for a big battle. Something important was about to happen. Maya quickly grabbed a pen and her special journal. She began to scribble notes very fast, writing down everything she was seeing and feeling from her divination. Her hand moved almost as fast as her thoughts. She used special codes and symbols that only hunters would understand. It was like a secret language, ensuring that if anyone else found her journal, they wouldn't know what she was talking about. Once her notes were complete, she sent her findings to Don. She knew he would understand the urgency and importance of her discovery, and he would know what to do with the information. Her message to Don was direct. The movements are strategic. Someone is directing them. She wanted to make sure he knew this was a planned attack, not just random monster appearances. In his Manila office, Don received Maya's report. He read it carefully, then immediately started to cross-reference it with other information. He wanted to make sure everything fit together. His office screen showed a detailed map of the entire Philippines. It was a digital map, clean and precise, ready to show where the threats were coming from. Bright red dots glowed on the map, each one marking every new sighting of a reanimated hunter. The map was becoming covered in them, showing how widespread the problem was. As Don looked, he saw that the dots were not random. They were forming lines like invisible roads, and slowly, surely, they were converging, meaning they were coming together at specific points. He quickly contacted other hunter groups across the country. He knew that sharing information fast was key to fighting this new organized threat. "Report on reanimated units," he instructed them, his voice calm and firm. "Confirm weakness. Fire." He wanted to make sure every hunter knew how to stop these new enemies. The responses from the other hunter groups came back quickly. They confirmed that they too were finding the same reanimated enemies, and that fire was indeed the only way to stop them. More hunter teams were facing these new threats every hour. The witching hour was suddenly very busy, and everyone was getting ready for a much bigger fight than they had expected. Many other hunters were struggling badly. They were not ready for this new kind of enemy, the reanimated dead. They didn't know that regular attacks wouldn't work, and that only fire could stop them. Don's voice, when he talked on the comms, was calm and steady. He had to be strong for everyone else, but deep inside, his mind was racing, trying to figure out this huge problem. He was working hard to keep the witching hour organized. He sent out messages, gave clear orders, and tried to make sure every hunter knew what to do even in this chaos. He quickly sent out important warnings to all hunter teams. "Conserve magical energy," he told them, meaning to use their magic carefully, because it was a limited resource. "Prioritize fire," he added, telling them fire was the best way to fight. Don knew Dean was out there somewhere, fighting alone. Because Dean was a rogue hunter, he didn't work with the teams. This made Don worry even more about his brother. A sudden pang, a sharp feeling of worry touched Don's heart. Even though he and Dean had a difficult relationship, a strained tie between them, he still cared deeply for his brother's safety. He missed fighting side by side with Dean. He remembered how they used to work together, a perfect team, covering each other's backs in every dangerous mission. Those were simpler times. Back in the field, Dean was facing a new horde. He had just finished one fight, but now, more dark figures were appearing in the distance, another wave of enemies coming his way. 5 reanimated hunters slowly emerged from an old, abandoned factory. The building was dark and crumbling, and the figures moved like shadows, escaping from a forgotten place. They moved with a terrible, slow purpose. They weren't fast, but their steps were steady, like they knew exactly where they were going and what they needed to do. This made them even scarier. Dean's eyes narrowed. One of the figures was a woman, and he vaguely recognized her face, even though it was twisted and pale. He had seen her before, years ago, maybe in an old photo. Her face was stretched and twisted into a silent snarl, like an animal. Her lips were pulled back from yellowed teeth, but no sound came out. It was a terrifying, frozen expression of rage. Seeing her like this, a cold, hard anger started to rise in Dean. It wasn't just fear, it was fury that these brave people, his own kind, were being used in such a terrible way. These were not just mindless monsters. They were desecrated heroes, brave hunters whose bodies were being disrespected and used against their will. It was an insult to their memory. Dean took a deep breath, focusing all his energy. He tightened his grip on his Buntot Paggy, getting ready for the fight. He had to be strong, ready for anything these reanimated figures threw at him. He knew what he had to do. His resolve hardened like steel. He had to burn them all completely. It was the only way to free them from this dark magic and put them to rest for good. As they got closer, Dean noticed a faint, oily mist hanging in the air around the reanimated hunters. It shimmered strangely, like a dark, sticky cloud that moved with them. The mist smelled very bad. It smelled faintly of graveyard earth, like dirt from a very old grave. But mixed with that was something even more foul, a stench of corruption and death. Dean recognized that terrible smell in the strange mist. This was the signature of the dark magic, the mark of the evil power that was controlling the reanimated hunters. It was a distinct and awful sign. Far away, in her apartment, Maya's divination also hinted at this. Her tarot cards and vision spoke of a puppeteer, a secret person controlling the reanimated, pulling their strings from the shadows. Maya's visions pointed to someone pulling the strings. This puppeteer was a master of death, controlling the reanimated hunters like puppets. This person had a terrible power over life and death. Dawn's reports, coming in from all over, spoke of a necromantic surge. This was a sudden, powerful burst of death magic, making the dead rise. It was a very bad sign, showing a strong new enemy. This was an ancient forbidden magic, a power that was not supposed to be used. It was old and evil, and it was now being used to bring back the dead, breaking the natural rules of the world. Dean fought tirelessly. Each swing of his fiery sword was a desperate act of defiance, a way to fight against this unnatural evil. He wouldn't give up, even when things felt hopeless. He wasn't just fighting monsters. He was fighting ghosts of the past, his own fallen comrades, now controlled by a new unknown enemy. It was a battle against memories and a new evil at the same time. The traitors from the Great Cleansing who were thought to be gone for good had returned, but they were not truly alive. They were just bodies used by a new force. They were just pawns now, like chess pieces in a dark game. Their bodies moved, but they had no souls, no minds of their own. They were empty shells, controlled by someone else. The real enemy, the one pulling the strings, was still hidden. They were watching, somewhere in the shadows, letting their puppets do the dirty work while they stayed safe and unseen. Dean wondered, who was strong enough to bring back the dead? What kind of person or thing had such a terrible, unnatural power? It was a frightening thought. Who had this terrible power, this ability to raise an army of the dead? The answer was a mystery, but Dean knew he had to find it. The key to stopping this threat lay in finding the source. Dean continued his grim work. He cleansed another reanimated hunter, turning its twisted body into ash with a burst of fire. It was a sad but necessary act to give them peace. The bright flames lit up his grim face, showing the tired lines and the deep worry in his eyes. The fire cast flickering shadows around him, making him look like a warrior of old. He knew this was just the beginning. This wasn't just a few monsters. This was a planned attack, a new war. The reanimated were only the first step, a warning of worse things to come. The witching hour was under attack again, just like 15 years ago. This time, the enemy was even more cunning, using their old members against them, striking at their very heart. And the enemy was stronger, bolder, and more evil than before. They were using forbidden magic, showing no fear, and their plans were clearly much bigger and more dangerous this time. The unpleasant scent of burnt flesh lingered in the air, a constant reminder of the battles Dean had just fought. It was a heavy, sad smell, mixed with the dampness of the night. Dean looked up at the night sky. It was dark and heavy, with no stars visible, as if the darkness was weighing down on the world. It matched the heavy feeling in his heart. He felt a shadow growing over the land, a dark presence spreading across the country. It was bigger than any one monster. It was a creeping, chilling sense of evil taking over. A new darkness was spreading. It was an evil that touched everything, making the air colder, the nights longer. Dean knew this was not just a small problem. It was a big war beginning. He prepared himself for the next fight. His resolve hardened, becoming strong like a rock. He would not stop. He would not give up, no matter how tough the battles became. The fight for the veil, the magical barrier that separated worlds, was far from over. It was clear now that this was just the beginning of a much bigger, more dangerous war. Meanwhile, in a hidden chamber, deep underground and far from any light, something sinister was happening. It was a secret place, completely out of sight. A shadowy figure sat in the chamber, watching images on a glowing screen. The screen showed different places, different times, all connected by a dark purpose. The images showed Dean fighting hard against the reanimated hunters. The figure watched every move, every swing of Dean's sword, analyzing his strength and skill. A faint, knowing smile played on the figure's lips. It was a smile that showed old knowledge, a dark satisfaction at the chaos Dean was facing. The figure seemed pleased with Dean's struggles. Dark, swirling energy gathered around the figure's hands. It pulsed with a cold, evil power, showing that this being was deeply connected to the necromantic magic that brought the dead back. Nearby on a stone pedestal lay a grimoire. It was an ancient book of spells, bound in dark leather, looking very old and powerful. Its pages were open to a dark, forbidden spell. The pages of the grimoire glowed with a sickly green light. It was an unhealthy color, showing the dark, poisonous magic within. The light pulsed, guiding the figure's actions. The figure made a soft, guttural sound, a low noise of satisfaction. It was a deep, pleased sound like a satisfied monster. The plan was working, just as it wanted. The reanimated hunters, the ones Dean was fighting, were just the first step in a much larger plan. They were like small pieces in a big, terrible puzzle that was slowly being put together. More powerful forces, even darker and stronger than the reanimated, were yet to come. The figure was building an army, preparing for a much bigger attack. The figure's eyes, cold and calculating, gleamed in the dark. They were sharp, intelligent eyes, showing a mind that planned every move, predicting every outcome. They were eyes without warmth or mercy. For this figure, the great cleansing, the terrible event 15 years ago, was not the end. Instead, it was a new beginning, a chance to start over and finish what was started long ago. Far away, in her apartment, Maya felt a cold dread settle over her. She knew something huge was coming. She closed her eyes again, trying to see more, to understand more. Her divination showed shadows stretching, reaching out like dark fingers across the land. They were spreading, getting closer to everything, touching even the places that felt safe. The source of the reanimation, the dark magic, was drawing closer and closer. Maya could feel its power growing, like a terrible storm gathering on the horizon. A chilling name echoed inside her mind, like a whisper from the shadows. The Summoner. This was the name of the one pulling the strings, the master of this terrible magic. Back in Manila, Don dispatched another team of hunters. He sent them to a new hotspot, a place where many reanimated hunters had been reported. He had to keep all areas covered. He knew deep down that these attacks were diversions, tricks to keep the witching hour busy. They were tests, ways for the enemy to learn and to distract them from the real plan. The real target, the main goal of the enemy, and the identity of the true enemy still remained unknown. It was like a giant puzzle piece that was missing, hidden in the dark. Dean wiped sweat from his brow. His muscles ached deeply from all the fighting. Every part of his body felt tired and worn out. He had been fighting for hours, pushing himself to his limits. Each reanimated hunter, each zombie he defeated, was a harsh reminder of the terrible battle 15 years ago. The great cleansing. The past kept coming back to haunt him. He remembered the chaos of that day, the fear that gripped everyone, and the bitter betrayal that tore the witching hour apart. It was a wound that never truly healed. He thought of his parents who were lost in the cleansing. They were brave hunters who died that day, and their memory fueled his determination to fight this new evil. His tattoos, the unique ones he created, pulsed faintly on his skin. They were a reminder of his special power, his strength, and his unique connection to magic. They were his personal weapon. This was a power that allowed him to fight this new, yet old, enemy. It was a battle against familiar faces, now twisted by a dark magic, and his tattoos gave him the edge he needed. Through the lingering smoke and the dark night, Dean saw a small, flickering light in the distance. It was weak, but it was there, a tiny spark of warmth in the cold darkness. It was a faint sign of human life, still bravely going on, even with the horrors spreading around him. It was a reminder of what he was fighting for. The innocent people, living their normal lives. He swore to protect it, to protect that precious human life, no matter the cost. He would fight until his last breath to keep the darkness from taking over their world. The war was changing. It was becoming darker, more dangerous, and more widespread than ever before. The rules were shifting, and Dean knew they were in for a long, hard fight. He braced himself, getting ready for what was coming next. He knew it would be difficult, but he was ready. His mind was set, his body prepared for the next challenge. Meanwhile, in her apartment, Maya saw a new vision. It was a dark, old book, its cover worn and ancient. This book felt evil, radiating a terrible, chilling power. It pulsed with negative magic, a sickening beat that felt wrong. This magic was corrupting everything it touched, twisting good into evil and life into unnatural undeath. Maya knew instantly that this book was key to the enemy's power. It was the source, the main tool they were using to do their terrible deeds. Without it, their magic would likely stop. It was directly linked to the reanimation, to the source of the dead rising. If they could find and stop this book, they might be able to end the nightmare that was spreading. Back in his office, Don's fingers drummed softly on his desk as he thought deeply. He was putting all the pieces together, connecting every clue, every report. He was piecing together Maya's mysterious clues from her divination, along with Dean's detailed combat reports from the field. Each piece of information was like a puzzle piece. A clear pattern was forming in his mind, a terrible design. The attacks were not random acts of monsters. They were part of a huge, carefully planned strategy by a dangerous enemy. The enemy was not just bringing back dead hunters to cause chaos. There was more to it than that. This was just a small part of a bigger, more evil scheme. They were using the reanimated hunters to learn, to adapt their methods, and to prepare for something much bigger. This was practice, a way to make their main plan even stronger. The enemy was using these reanimated hunters to prepare for something much bigger, something much worse. Don knew a huge, terrible plan was about to unfold. Dean, still traveling, found another group of reanimated hunters. They were gathered in a new, unexpected place, making him realize this was no accident. This time, they guarded an old, abandoned church. Its broken windows and crumbling walls made it look like a forgotten place, now given a dark new purpose. The air inside the church felt thick and heavy with dark energy. It was a cold, chilling feeling that made Dean's skin prickle, a sign of evil magic. He knew right away this was no random location. The enemy chose this spot for a reason. There was something special about the church, or its location, that they needed. There was a purpose behind their placement, a hidden meaning for them being here. Dean understood that the enemy wasn't just throwing monsters around. They were executing a plan. He prepared his weapons, his Buntat Pagi glowing faintly on his wrist, ready to turn into a deadly blade. He also touched his tattoos, making sure they were ready too. His tattoos rippled across his arm, ready to transform into his powerful familiars. He could feel the magic building inside him, preparing to unleash his unique powers. The fight that followed was relentless. It never seemed to end, a constant wave of attacks. It was a true test of endurance, pushing Dean to his very limits. He moved like a shadow, swift and quiet, striking with perfect precision. Every move was aimed to defeat, every blow delivered with deadly accuracy, wasting no energy. He heard the low, guttural growls of the reanimated hunters. Their noises were constant, relentless, filling the air with a terrible sound that never stopped, even as he fought. Dean looked around the old church. He used his environment, smashing debris, like broken wooden benches and old church pews, to create fire. He needed every advantage he could get. The flames danced around him, bright and hot, cleansing the corrupted bodies of the reanimated. Each burning figure was a painful reminder, but also a step towards stopping the evil. One by one, each reanimated hunter turned to ash, falling silently to the ground. Their tormented existence was finally over, leaving only dust behind. The church began to grow quiet again. Dean felt a powerful wave of exhaustion wash over him. His body screamed for rest, but he pushed it away. He couldn't stop, not yet. There was still too much to do. He was a protector, a guardian. That was his purpose, his duty. He stood between the world of humans and the dark forces that wanted to harm them. He swore he would not rest until the threat was completely gone, until every last reanimated hunter was turned to ash, and the source of this evil was stopped for good. He looked at the ashes around him and wondered, who was truly behind this evil? Who was the one strong enough to do such terrible things? What was their ultimate goal? Why bring back the dead? Dean knew there was a bigger plan at play, something more sinister than just attacking hunters. He looked at the empty church, now quiet again after the battle. The stillness felt heavy, but also offered a brief moment of peace before the next fight. Even though the battle was over, the evil feeling lingered in the old church. It was a cold, dark presence that settled in the air, making Dean feel uneasy. It was a sign of the deep evil that had been there. Far away in her apartment, Maya's next tarot card reading showed something very clear. It was a distinct face, sharp and evil, emerging from the cards, a face she had never seen before. It was the figure of a person, cloaked in deep shadows, hiding their full form. But even in shadow, a dark, unpleasant smile was visible on their lips, full of cruel amusement. Maya knew instantly. This was the face of the orchestrator, the one who was pulling all the strings. This was the true enemy, the one behind all the horror, revealed at last. The tarot card showed a vast, complex web of power around this figure. It was like invisible threads reaching out, connecting everything, showing how much control this enemy had. It was a power that corrupted, twisting everything good into something evil. It controlled minds and actions, turning brave hunters into mindless, reanimated puppets. It was deeply disturbing. Back at his office, Don sent out a new alert, a very important message to all hunter groups. His voice was firm, showing the urgency of the situation. Extreme caution, he warned them. Enemy operating with strategic intent. He wanted them to know this was no random attack, but a carefully planned move. He also added another critical piece of information. Necromantic source identified as primary threat. This meant the source of the death magic was the main thing they needed to find and stop. Dean received the update on his comms device, and it confirmed all his fears. He had suspected it, but now he knew for sure. This was a grand evil plan. He wasn't just fighting mindless zombies like in old horror movies. He was fighting something with a purpose, with intelligence, and with a terrible will guiding it. He was fighting a mind, a twisted will, a cunning enemy who played a dark game with human lives and dead bodies. This enemy was truly dangerous, more than any monster. The hunt was getting personal now. This wasn't just about missions. It was about vengeance for the fallen, and stopping a force that had caused so much pain to his family. He clenched his jaw, his determination hardening. He was determined to find the source of this evil, to find the one who was pulling the strings and to make them pay. The sun was beginning to rise, painting the sky in soft shades of gray and pink. A new day was coming, but it brought little warmth or hope, only a chilling reminder of the fight ahead. It was another night of fighting, another night of loss and horror. Dean thought about all the battles, all the reanimated hunters he had put to rest, and the heavy cost of his duties. But through the tiredness and the sadness, Dean felt a new sense of purpose bloom inside him. It was a strong, clear feeling that guided him forward. He would find the summoner, the one who commanded the dead. He would bring them to justice and make them pay for every life they had twisted and every horror they had unleashed. The witching hour was now on high alert, reeling from the sudden, widespread attacks. They were shaken, but not broken, gathering their strength for the war ahead. Leaders held urgent meetings, scrambling for answers, trying to understand the enemy's moves and planning their next steps. The stakes were higher than ever before. The reanimated hunters were a very frightening reminder. They were like living ghosts, proving that the old, terrible events were not truly over. They brought back old fears. They were a reminder of the painful past, of the great cleansing. And they were also a dark warning for the future, showing that even worse things were coming, building up to a new conflict. Even the veil, the invisible magical barrier that separated the worlds, felt restless. It was vibrating with a new tension, as if the dark magic was affecting it, making it tremble. Sightings of Encanto, the magical creatures from the Garden of Eden, increased everywhere. They were disturbed by the dark magic spreading into the human world, reacting to the unnatural presence. Maya felt a throbbing headache from all the constant visions. Her mind was overloaded with too much dark information, too many glimpses of a terrible future. It was draining her. The future was murky, hard to see clearly, like looking through thick fog. But one thing was absolutely clear, a truth that shone through the confusion. A powerful enemy was making a big move. They were no longer hiding, but actively setting their plans into motion, ready to shake the world. This was an enemy directly connected to the Great Cleansing. They were either the old traitors themselves, or someone who had gained power from that terrible event. This enemy had dark, forbidden knowledge. They knew magic that was not supposed to be used, secrets that could bring endless destruction and suffering. Dean stood on a rooftop overlooking the city below. The wind blew his hair, and he gazed out at the sleeping buildings, his mind heavy with his mission. The city was still sleeping, peaceful and unaware of the horror that was spreading beneath its quiet surface. It was a fragile peace that Dean fought to protect. He felt the familiar, heavy weight of his mission on his shoulders. It was a heavy burden, but one he carried with courage and a grim determination. He was the shield for humanity, protecting them from the unseen dangers. He was also the blade, striking against the darkness that threatened to consume everything. He swore he would not fail, not for his clan, who had sacrificed so much, and not for humanity, who deserved to live free from supernatural threats. The time for answers was fast approaching. Dean could feel it, like a clock ticking louder and louder. Soon, all the secrets would be revealed, and he would face the truth. The summoner, the hidden enemy, would be revealed, and soon. Dean knew he would finally come face to face with the one behind all the suffering. He hoped he was ready for what he would find. He hoped he was strong enough, prepared enough, to face the mastermind of this terrible war. He had to be. A cold wind suddenly blew across the rooftop, carrying the lingering scent of smoke from the recent fires. But it also carried something else, something ancient and deeply chilling. It was the smell of something ancient and evil stirring beneath the surface of the world. A deep, malevolent power was waking up, ready to cause chaos. This was more than just a monster hunt. It was a full-blown war. A war between light and darkness, between the living and the reanimated dead, on a scale Dean had never seen before. The echoes of the Great Cleansing, the sounds and feelings of that past horror, were growing louder. They weren't just memories, they were a growing threat, becoming more real each day. They were haunting reminders, promises of more pain and destruction to come. The past was not just history. It was a ghost returning, bringing new terror with it. Dean tightened his grip on his Boontot Paggy. Even though it was dormant, not glowing, he could feel its familiar weight, a promise of power and protection in his hand. He was ready for the next battle, whatever it might be. He didn't know what was coming, but he knew he would face it head-on, with courage and all his strength. The entire world held its breath, unknowingly. Humans went about their lives, unaware of the terrifying war building in the shadows, waiting to burst into their reality. The lines between life and death were blurring. The world was changing, becoming a place where the dead could walk, and where magic was twisted for dark purposes. A dark magic was taking hold, spreading its evil roots deeper into the world. It was a powerful, corrupted force, threatening to cover everything in shadow. And Dean was right in the middle of it all, standing between humanity and the rising darkness. He was the main line of defense, a single fighter against a growing evil. He knew he had to keep fighting. There was no other choice. Surrender was not an option when so many innocent lives were at stake. He had to keep pushing forward. He fought for every hunter who had fallen, for those who gave their lives protecting the veil. Their sacrifice would not be in vain. Not while Dean still stood. He fought for every innocent life that was threatened by this new evil. The people who lived unaware, who deserved to be safe from the creatures of the night. The reanimated hunters were just the messengers, the first wave. They were pawns, sent to deliver a terrifying warning, a prelude to the true terror. The true horror, the one behind all of this, was still lurking in the shadows. It was the master, the source of the dark magic, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But not for long, he vowed to himself. He would not let this evil hide forever. He would hunt it down, no matter where it tried to conceal itself. Not for long. He would find it, and he would end it. This was his promise, a solemn vow in the face of the growing darkness. He began to walk towards the rising sun, leaving the dark, silent battlegrounds behind. The new day would bring new challenges, but also new opportunities to fight. Ready for whatever the new day would bring, Dean moved forward. He was a lone warrior facing an unknown future, but his spirit was unbroken. In some districts, the smell of fear was thick in the air. People could feel something was wrong, even if they didn't know what it was. A general sense of unease filled the streets. People were whispering about ghosts and monsters, using old stories to try and explain the strange things happening. Social media was full of blurry videos and frightened messages. Maya's vlogs tried hard to calm them down, to make them believe it was all fake, but it was getting harder and harder to make people believe her explanations. The truth was starting to break through. Maya felt the public's fear growing stronger every day, like a storm gathering in the sky. The more weird things happened, the harder it was to hide the truth, and the more scared people became. Meanwhile, Dawn was busy at Witching Hour headquarters working with new hunter recruits. These were young people just starting their training who would soon join the fight. They were scared, nervous about the dangers they faced, but they were also determined. They tried their best to learn fast, knowing that many lives depended on them. The Witching Hour was stretched thin, meaning they had too much to do with too few people. The attacks were happening everywhere, making it hard to send enough hunters to every spot. Dean found himself fighting a lone, reanimated hunter in a deserted mall. The huge shopping center was empty and dark, a strange place for such a deadly battle. The reanimated hunter wore the uniform of a different clan, not Dean's own clan. It was a reminder that this dark magic affected all hunter families. As he fought, Dean saw a flicker of something in its empty eyes, It was a brief moment, but he thought he saw the pain from its past life, a glimpse of the person it once was. Dean ended its suffering quickly, with a burst of fire from his boon-taught Paggy. It was a mercy, setting the tormented soul free from the evil that controlled it. He knew these reanimated figures were not truly alive. They were just bodies, empty shells, brought back by a terrible power. They were not people, but tools of evil. They were puppets, controlled by a terrible force, a hidden hand guiding their every move. Dean was fighting the master, not just the puppets themselves. Meanwhile, Maya's next divination showed a dark, shadowy figure. It was a shape made of pure darkness, almost like a living shadow, too unclear to fully make out. The figure was not human, nor was it an Encanto, a magical being from the Garden of Eden. It was something else entirely, something ancient and deeply evil, beyond known categories. It had tendrils of shadow reaching out, like dark, smoky arms, controlling the dead from afar. These shadows were the strings of the puppet master, pulling the reanimated into action. This entity commanded immense power, a vast and terrible strength that seemed to flow directly from the darkest corners of existence. Maya could feel its raw, evil force. It was a power that defied the very rules of life and death, bending them to its will. It made dead things walk and brought darkness where there should be light. It was an unnatural force. Maya tried to focus even harder, to get a clear image of this shadowy figure. She squeezed her eyes shut, pushing her mind to see through the darkness. But the figure was cloaked in swirling darkness, always just out of reach, impossible to fully see. It was like trying to grasp smoke. The more she tried, the more it slipped away. She could only feel its cold, ancient malevolence, a feeling of deep old evil that seeped into her bones. It was a chilling presence that promised only destruction. Dawn, receiving more reports, sent out an urgent message to all hunters. Identify necromantic source. He knew they had to find where this dark magic was truly coming from. He knew this was the absolute key to stopping the attacks. Finding and destroying the source of this necromantic power was their only hope to end the nightmare. Dean carefully cleaned his boon-taught Pagi, wiping away any dirt or residue from the battle. It was a ritual he performed often, a quiet moment of care for his most trusted weapon. This act helped him clear his mind after a tough fight. As he cleaned, Dean's thoughts drifted to the brave hunters who had died. He remembered their faces, their laughter, and their courage before the great cleansing. So many good people, gone too soon. The worst part was that now their very bodies were being used as weapons. They were forced to fight against their own kind, their friends, and their families by a dark magic. It was a cruel fate for heroes. This was a cruel, twisted form of mockery. It was like a joke played by the enemy, making the dead fight those they once protected. Dean felt a deep anger for this disrespect. A powerful surge of cold fury rushed through Dean. It wasn't a hot, wild anger, but a cold, steady fire that made him even more determined. He would make them pay for this. This enemy, the one behind all this horror, had to be stopped. Dean knew it deep in his bones. No matter what it took, no matter the danger or the pain, he would bring them down. He pictured the new leader, the summoner, in his mind. He didn't know their face yet, but he imagined a figure of pure evil, pulling strings in the dark. This was his true target. Dean knew this leader was dangerous, very dangerous. They were utterly ruthless, meaning they cared about no one and would do anything to win. This made them a terrible enemy. He understood that the reanimated hunters were just the tip of the iceberg. They were only a small part of a much bigger hidden threat. The real danger was still mostly unseen, lurking beneath the surface. A much larger, more sinister plan was slowly unfolding. It was like a giant evil puzzle, and Dean was only just starting to see the true picture. The enemy's goals were much grander than simple attacks. Dean prepared himself mentally and physically for the ultimate confrontation. He knew this would be the biggest, most important fight of his life, and he had to be ready for everything. The fight against the reanimated hunters was over for now, but Dean knew it meant only one thing. The next chapter in the war had truly begun. This was a new, darker phase of the battle for humanity, and Dean was ready to face it head-on. He would not back down. He would meet the darkness with all his strength, his courage, and his unique powers. He was prepared to fight until the very end.
Shadows creep where the old truths sleep. City lights blur what secrets stir. From a lagging streets to the city's heart, a row hunter's feats playing a dangerous part. 15 years since the cleansing scar. Now the veil's thin, not far, not far. Monsters crawl beyond the wall. He's hunting them down, gonna make them fall.